Well, in the heat of summer, we're always looking for shade. And those of us with shade gardens want sun, and those of us with sun want shade gardens. But let's first start by defining what is shade.
Exactly. And you know, a lot of people don't know how to assess their shade.
Right.
And it really makes a difference
It
in both
does.
plant selection and in how you landscape the shade.
Yeah.
So when people say, well, I've got full shade, unless you're living deep in a forest, you don't really have full shade.
Yes.
So normally people will say full shade when they have they're under the canopy of a tree like a pecan or an oak.
Right.
And they think of that as full shade, but really it's not. It's a partial shade situation. And a lot of times under trees we have a filtered sun situation.
Right.
So it's understanding that we do have, you know, you have to kind of figure out when is the shadiest part of the day.
Right.
There may be areas that literally don't get direct sun all day long.
Right.
And then there are plants that will get sun part of the day, like things that are on the east side of your shade trees are going to get the morning sun. On the south and west side, they're going to get the afternoon sun. And there's a huge difference in placing plants on one or the other.
Right.
On the Gulf Coast, everything loves that morning sun, afternoon shade after about 1, 2, 3 o'clock, and they get a little bit of relief in the evening.
Yeah.
Lots of plants thrive in that condition, even some of our blooming plants.
Right.
But when you're placing plants, you need to think about the fact that they are going to get sunshine for part of the day. Some of them may even get full direct sun during part of the day.
Right.
So understanding your shade is really the first step in understanding how to lay plants out in that, or even how to select plants from the very beginning.
Well, you know, and I often tell people too, well, I feel like I'm grilling them when they come in because I ask so many questions. Is it shade from a tree, shade from a building, morning shade, afternoon shade? But, you know, you almost need to map your sun too.
Yes.
We tend to be certain areas of our house, like the kitchen window, at certain times of the day, or we don't visit a particular part of the yard on a regular basis at all.
Right.
So we need to go outside like at 8, 10, 12, 2, and 4. If this is an area that is new to us or we're landscaping a new yard or a new garden, and literally map that summer sun. The winter sun is perfect.
Right.
Any amount of it.
Yes.
But it's this summer
This
sun
time of year
that is absolutely critical in plant selection.
It is. And you know, even on the north side of a building, like the north side of your house, during much of the day, that when you go out and look, that's going to look like just a really deeply shaded area.
Right.
And yet, if you have, when the sun moves to the west just before sunset, that can get bombarded with an hour, hour and a half of full sun.
And sometimes 2 or 3 hours of that sun is too much for a shade plant.
Right. For some of them, it is. So it really is just an idea of, landscapers call it a sun survey. Do a sun survey of your landscape. And like you say, going out different times of the day and then assessing how deep that shade is.
Right. But not to fear. When you have a shade garden, some of the most beautiful gardens I've ever seen have not one flower in them.
That's
and we
true.
get so obsessed with we have to have something that blooms. But if you have colorful foliage, it is always in bloom.
It's always in bloom. You always have that beautiful, beautiful variation in the foliage. And it stays with you, where even the best blooming plants have cycles of bloom and cycles out, or even cycles in which they don't look all that great.
That's true.
And your shade plants are going to stay beautiful all the time.
I mean, what is any prettier than
gorgeous.
this? It's gorgeous. And you know, you've even got, so this is caladium.
Right.
So you've got caladium and coleus. Coleus are more of an annual.
Yes.
The caladiums are a bulb.
Right.
Oftentimes they return for years if you get them in a well-draining spot.
Yep. And make sure they're fertilized.
Another good one is, I love the Stromanthes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful color.
And so it's in the ginger family and definitely will return year after year.
It certainly will. And you know, the thing about it is, look how much color you're getting out of the plant with three colors in the variegation. And then too, remember that there are sun caladiums and shade caladiums, so make sure you're choosing the right variety for your particular sun exposure.
Well, let's go explore the shade house a little bit more. So, you know, we were talking about the colorful foliage. Well, what we need to add to that is not only color in the foliage, but texture. Texture and movement. And there's so much to add to that with our shady garden as well. And some of the ones we're going to talk about today kind of tick both boxes. You've got the beautiful oxalis here. So you've got this colorful foliage, you do have a bloom, and you have this texture.
Yes, and one thing about oxalis, and this purple oxalis is just gorgeous, is to remember that it has cycles.
Right.
So when you see this start to fade and go down in the garden, don't panic. It's not dying. It's going to rest for a little while, and then it's going to flush right back out. A lot of people think that they've lost their oxalis. They'll even trash the oxalis without realizing it's going to be back.
It will, and you know, it's most beautiful during the winter.
Yes, it really is. It's a beautiful plant.
It's a great choice. Another one we were talking about, we had a hard time picking out which ones we were going to highlight today.
We sure
So
did.
we really got to just tour you privately through the shade house. But I love the bird nest fern here.
I do too.
This guy looks like kind of a bad hair day.
It really does, but you know, all the bird nest ferns are beautiful, but this one has so much character.
It does. It does. Character, I like that. So one of my personal favorites, and as you know, there are many, is this gorgeous terrace fern.
Yeah, terrace ferns are absolutely lovely, and this one, in my mind, also has both color and texture.
Right.
And then just the shape of the leaves, the fact that the wind is going to catch it, it's just a beautiful plant.
Movement. It's the movement. And you know, even after the big event, my terrace fern was the first thing back in my garden.
Yeah.
I lost some of my shadier big cover plants, but this guy now is getting full afternoon sun. But I think being a well-established plant,
right, it does make a
blinking.
difference. Right, they have a chance to adapt.
They do. They really do. And so many of them do adapt quite well. Another one that I've noticed has done that is the hardy calathea. The hardy calathea is a much lower growing, but again adds that beautiful texture and color. These leaves, as they mature, get that purple color along the back, and it does have a bloom.
It does, and this is beautiful, planted in clusters around the base of taller gingers.
It colonizes. I'm not going to say it runs. It's not invasive.
No.
But you can actually do a really pretty, almost a ground cover effect with this.
Yeah, and you really do want that effect. You want layers in that garden just like any other garden. It's sort of recreating a woodland appearance.
Right.
And they do make themselves in beautiful little clumps.
Right. You know, the ones that we've talked about have been very reliable perennials, and in a mild winter can be evergreen for us too.
Yes.
But this beauty is evergreen irregardless.
Yeah. Ligularias are just say shade garden to them
they
all
do.
over. And this is a plant that again that also will slowly clump out and multiply. They call it leopard plant,
Yes.
which is a common name for it, but it has, you know, this variety has these beautiful spots on it. And they love the shade. They're dependable. And then the bonus to this is that it is a fall bloomer, and it has a flower that surprises people since it looks like a daisy.
It does. It does. So this one's got it all.
Yeah.
And again, you can't talk about texture without talking about ferns, but I wanted you to see this mahogany fern. Is this not spectacular?
I love this color. You know, I've always liked, I love my autumn fern, but there's just something about this mahogany color. It's perfectly named. And if it performs like the autumn fern, this is a winner.
And you know, in size, this can get up to 3 feet tall.
Yeah, and it has those beautiful fiddle heads. It's just everything about it says texture. It's just beautiful.
So can't you see a patio container just
oh my
filled
gosh,
with this?
yes.
And I had to mention this one. I first got this plant probably 30 plus years ago from a lady in the Heights. She dug some up for me out of her garden. So this is Achaemenes or Achaemenes, however you want to pronounce it. And it's a little bulb. It will definitely naturalize through the landscape. Again, it gives you the texture, it gives you the foliage color, but look at that bloom.
It's so pretty. And you know, the funny thing is, I would actually categorize this as an heirloom plant.
Oh, definitely.
And pass along, because so many of us had those many years ago, and I'm glad to see it back in the nursery.
I know, isn't it exciting? I was thrilled to be able to offer it again.
Beautiful little plant.
Well, thank you so much for this quick tour of the Shade House, and we will see you soon to discover the Shade House for your shady garden.